I'd like to call the meeting to order. I am Mike McGowan, Chairperson of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all to the committee meetings and public hearing this morning, December 1st. Hard to believe it's December, isn't it? This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website at the meeting's conclusion. I would like to announce that due to COVID, we are limiting the number of attendees at today's meeting to the extent possible. Unvaccinated people are required to wear masks, and all attendees are encouraged to abide by the 6-foot social distancing rule. In the interest of protecting the health and safety of any members of the public who wish to address the board, they may do so from an adjacent conference room. Thank you for your cooperation in this regard. Now I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety and Security and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a safety briefing regarding protocol for those individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency. Shane?
Good morning. Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. We're currently located on the first floor here at M.U.D headquarters, and the nearest fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and AED are through this door right here. With the location of the AED in mind, a show of hands, who's CPR and AED trained in the room? Thank you. Should there be a medical emergency in this room, 911 will be contacted by the security desk, and they will escort medical personnel into this room. Should we need to evacuate this room for any reason, we'll go through the same door, take 2 lefts, and reconvene in the parking garage where we'll conduct an accountability. That concludes the safety briefing.
Thank you very much. Roll call.
Howard. Here. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Friend.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here. I'd like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the room, and a copy is also available in a nearby conference room set aside for members of the public who may attend. Construction and operation. Gina, would you cover the proposed capital expenditures? Good morning.
Good morning. Gina Langle, Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 5 is our capital expenditures letter. I only have a couple of items to discuss today. For the system improvements, though, as you can see on the map, they're kind of scattered throughout all the subdivisions. Most of these are relocation projects. I will not be discussing these today. Under building, plants, and equipment, I would like you to go to page 3, item number 1. This is the Northgate Public Fill Station for $302,500. This CNA is for design and construction for station modifications to the district's North Public CNG Fill Station. This is the first of 2-phase projects that we'll have. The second phase will come to you in the spring of 2022. In 2021, the district aided in the development of 2 fill stations along the I-80 corridor. We had I-80 fuels at 52nd and L Streets, and also the Northgate CNG station that's located by our construction center. If you go to the parking lot around 64th and, 64th Avenue and Arbor Street, there's a parking lot there that we have a dispenser for a public fill station right there. It's kind of corner to Baxter Arena. The I-80 fuel station could accommodate all types of vehicle fills, including large vehicles. The Northgate station did not accommodate large vehicles. Recently, the I-80 fuels was sold, or they sold their property, and they asked us to remove the construction equipment that was there for the CNG filling. So this limits our ability for the large fuels to fuel there, or large vehicles to fuel. The Northgate station is also a backup to customers with CNG fleets during the polar vortex. And our peak shaving operations, we utilized that particular area too. So some of our customers that have CNG fleets, they are not able to use their compressor stations during our peak shaving operations because it's detrimental to their equipment. And so they would come to either I-80 Fuels or also to our Northgate station. With the loss of this station, we needed to find a way to be able to help for public fuel of large vehicles. So we are now going to modify the Northgate Public CNG fill station to accommodate large vehicles, including modifications to the turning radius, maximizing the entrance and exits so that they meet our city codes, and relocate the district employee parking lot entrance, which limits now the CNG access for large vehicles. Again, phase 2 will take place in the spring. And we've taken the equipment from I-80 Fuels. So for the phase 2 part of the project, we will increase the storage and the flow rate by adding another feed line and the equipment so that we can do more than one fueling at a time for the vehicles. An additional dispenser will also be installed in the spring when we come back with the second CNA for this one. Any questions?
Gina, for right now, where are these large vehicles being filled at?
So a lot of the fleets, some of the fleets actually have their own fill stations, so this would be a backup for the peak shaving one. But right now, the only place that they can fill is with us, and there are a few other stations that are along, in there. But this was the ones that we had along the I-80 corridor to make it more easy for them to go ahead and fill.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. The second item I'd like to talk about is on page 3. It is the Platte West surge tank repairs for Platte West water treatment plant. This CNA is for the repairs of the Platte West surge tanks. During a recent inspection, it was found that one of the bladders on the Platte West surge tanks had failed. So these surge tanks are really large tanks that are up pretty high. They have bladders in them. And what happens with this is when water comes in, if there's any pressure transients or any sort of a hammer, it will go ahead and take it'll modify that because there's air and there's water between the bladder. And so when the water comes up, it'll push up and it'll keep it from hammering any parts of our system. And so one of the bladders had failed in one of those tanks. The bladder life expectancy is usually 20 to 25 years. This particular one failed after 15 years. It is no longer under warranty. The project includes bladder replacement and parts to improve operational aspects for both tanks, removal and replacement of the failed bladder, and improvements to facilitate easier repairs for both tanks. The second bladder will be kept on site for future repairs since the bladder did fail on one of them. For Zone 1, the Zone 1 tank, we'll keep the one for the other one in storage until we might need that one. This was considered an emergency CNA to meet the schedule due to supply chain disruptions and the volatility of the pricing that we had at that time. This particular project is included in the 2022 budget and is planned to be completed early of next year. Any questions on that one? Okay, that's all I have today.
Thank you, Gina. Now, Director of Engineering Design, Jeff Skovanak, will present the proposed contract renewal with HGM Water Main Design Consultant. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff Skovanak. I am your Director of Engineering Design, and I'm going to be speaking with you this morning about the letter behind tab 6. And as Mr. McGowan said, that's a renewal of the 3-year agreement with HGM Associates for water main design and associated services. I'd like to share a few highlights with you regarding the letter, touch on maybe some details and some background history that isn't embedded within the letter, and then obviously answer any questions you might have at any point throughout my remarks. Regarding the back history, the district has, engineering design specifically, has utilized water main design consultants since early 2013, both with new development designs and designs for water infrastructure replacement projects. We embarked on that after going through a process whereby we selected HGM from a number of other local consultants, and that's been a really good working relationship, partnership with us and HGM for a number of years now. We get a lot of benefits from that. HGM performs for us at a very high level, and kind of a tangible way that I can explain that is when you look at a set of construction plans that comes from HGM and compare those to a set of plans that comes from our internal design staff.
Speak up or-
Yes, thank you. You really won't see a difference in those plans, and that's by design. We want to make sure that our own forces, our construction crews, the contractors that do the work for us really have a pretty seamless set of plans, and they don't see differences. But it goes deeper than that. HGM understands how to assemble those plans electronically using the CAD software that we have and that we require them to use. And they build those in a way such that as we take those plans through design, review, into plan production, out in the field, as built in electronically, data entry later on, all of that electronic CAD background is done in a way that allows really seamless workflows for all of our forces that deal with those internal and external. We were so pleased with our initial agreement and contract with HGM that we entered into a couple 2-year extensions, 2-year renewals. That said, in late 2017 into early 2018, we recognized that we wanted to make sure, verify that what we felt was true, that we were getting good quality work from a high quality consulting firm at good prices, what was in fact true. So in 2018, we went back out, looked at the local workforce in terms of consultants, and went through a vetting process and ended up selecting HGM again. But that was a good process for us in a couple reasons. It verified what we believed we knew, but it also pointed out to us that there was at least one other consultant out there that we wanted to work with. And I think that's an important point. This agreement is not exclusive with HGM. We have the ability to work with other design consultants. We have, we are, we will, and HGM understands that. So I guess in summary, I would point out to you, again, as the letter suggests, that we're asking to enter into a new 3-year agreement with HGM. And despite everything that's going on locally, nationally, in the world, especially with pricing, HGM has provided a commitment to us that through their wage rate schedules, that a 3% fixed annual increase each year of that 3-year agreement is all they would seek. And with that, I am glad to answer any questions you may have of me regarding this subject.
Jeff, are they bound by that 3-year annual increase, or can they opt out of that agreement?
They have honored that every year that we've been in partnership with them. They've never once asked to re-examine that, and I don't anticipate they would going forward, despite what we're seeing going on. So it's a hard commitment. I have that in writing at this point.
Okay.
Jeff, I think you answered this during your presentation, but just to follow up, the 2 additional design consultants that the district will be working with, did they submit bids also, and they went through the vetting process?
They did. They were
Okay.
part of that.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Stephanie Hen will review the acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates. Good morning.
There we go. Can you hear me? Great, thank you. Good morning, Stephanie Hen, Director of Plant Engineering. I will be addressing the finals letter behind tab number 7 this morning. We have a short letter this month, just one final on there. This was a project that was built by MCL Construction. This was removal of existing masonry walls in our existing construction center that we're now referring to as CC1. This was due to the settling issues that we have had in that building that we've previously informed you about. The project is now complete, and this area has been opened back up for use. We anticipate that the costs associated with this project will be reimbursed by our insurance company. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Nice
Thank
and
you.
short.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Zellers, will you review the bids on materials and contracts, please? Morning, John.
Good morning. John Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 8, and there are a few items that I would like to cover this morning. The first may be found on page 1. The board may recall last month seeing the bid for the installation of water mains in Serenity Estates. At the request of the developer and management, the board took no action at that time. The developer has now asked that the district move forward with accepting the bid from Cedar Construction, which is recommended for approval. We are requesting 2 ratifications, which may be found on page 2. The first is for the purchase of Scada hardware at the LNG and 2 propane air facilities. The hardware will replace existing infrastructure as part of the district's 5-year replacement program to improve and maintain reliability and performance of the Scada HMI systems. 3 bids were received in which the purchase was made with the low bidder to help mitigate long lead times and supply chain challenges. The second is for the purchase of 3,600 feet of 16-inch wrapped steel gas pipe required for the Oppd's Standing Bear Lake Generation Station, which the board approved the CNA for during last month's board meeting. 2 bids were received. Due to long lead times, the purchase was made with the low bidder to assure the pipe was received by the scheduled project start date. The last item may also be found on page 2. We are asking for approval for a 3-year license renewal with Esri, who provides district GIS software used for our mapping operations. Upon board approval, 3 equal annual payments will be made through the renewal period. Esri's quote is recommended for approval. And that's all I have for you this morning, but happy to answer any questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Corey O'Brien will review the proposed main extension, water main extension, or main extensions, I guess. Corey?
Good morning. Corey O'Brien, Vice President of Engineering and Construction. Behind tab 9 this morning is our main extensions letter. And we have 3 main extensions this month, 2 water and 1 gas. The impact of the water main extensions is 21 single residence lots and 4 multi-residence lots. And on the gas side, the impact is 132 single residence lots. And if you look at the map there on the screen, you can see that the 3 projects are divided amongst subdivisions 1, 2, and 4 this month. Just briefly on page 2, water main extension number 1 for Serenity Estates. That is the project that was held over from last month, but we're proceeding at this point. I would also note that both water main extensions, the projects, the developers have requested district gas for both of those projects. On the gas main for Anchor View, I would note that management is recommending that we upsize 1,340 feet of gas main to 4-inch at an estimated district cost of about $18,600. That's all I have to present on the main extensions this morning, but I'd be glad to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, would you review the wage and salary increases and ratifications, please?
You bet. Good morning. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. I'll start with employee counts for the end of November 2020 and 21. For November 30th of 2020, we had 808 regular full-time employees and 4 regular part-time employees for a total of 812. To end this November, there were 828 regular full-time employees and 3 regular part-time employees for a total of 831. We did have 6 temporary part-time employees as well at the end of November. For jobs that are actively in various stages of the job placement process, we have 4 jobs that have requisitions that are currently being routed for approvals or denials through that process. 6 jobs are currently posted. 2 of those are posted internally, 3 are external, and 1 is both internal and external. 17 jobs are in the application review or interview stages, and 5 jobs have 6 selected candidates that are going through the hiring process right now. Okay. I will I'll turn the page here and get over to tab 10. Behind tab 10, you will find the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 8 employees this month. 5 OAC employees are being promoted in the normal job posting process. 2 SPAs are being promoted through the same type of process, and there was 1 new hire ratification this month in the customer accounting division, or last month, I should say. Any questions on that letter? Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone's being pretty quiet today.
Well, now you just jinxed it. So. I was going to say, we're moving right along. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. I'm here to speak to a few items, tabs 11, 12, and 13. Behind tab 11, you'll see a letter, and I believe Mr. Roberts will present a map up on the big screen here. So according to Nebraska Revised Statute 32540, which is part of the Nebraska Elections Act, this board shall, after each decennial census, create new boundaries for election subdivisions. The requirements of this effort are that those boundaries shall follow county lines wherever practicable, shall provide for the subdivisions to be composed of substantially equal population, and be compact and contiguous in territory. In addition, they shall, as nearly as possible, follow precinct lines created by the election commissioners. As you all know, we are subject to 4 election commissioners with the 4 counties that the district serves, Douglas, Sarpy, Saunders, and Washington. In advance of this requirement, the district engaged the University of Nebraska Omaha Center for Public Affairs Research. We worked with this group as census data was released by the federal government in August of 2021. Shortly thereafter, the Nebraska legislature convened a special session, which resulted in newly created legislative districts. That was completed September 30 of 2021. And then finally, precinct lines of those election commissioners of those 4 counties were completed and submitted at the deadline of November 1. And so what you'll see here is a map that shows the 7 subdivisions that were newly drawn for your consideration. A few things that I would note. The subdivisions match with the numbers of the current subdivisions that you all serve. And so, for example, Director Director Bagley, I believe, is serving Subdivision 1, Director Friend, Subdivision 2, etc. You all reside in your, with the exception of Director Frost, reside in your respective subdivisions. The respective subdivisions are of equally, substantially equal population. The total of the district saw a population increase from 2010 to 2020 of approximately 100,000 people. So our entire subdivision or district service area is approximately 712,000 people now. And I believe the growth was primarily, there was some growth downtown in Omaha, and then the majority of the growth was along western Omaha, western Douglas County. Which is interesting, just a kind of a side note, throughout the state, I believe the state saw a decrease in the majority of the counties except for the 4 counties that we serve. I think that these 4 counties, in addition to a few others like Lancaster, these 4 counties did see growth. So again, back to the subdivisions that are proposed here. You all live, again with the exception of Director Frost, in the subdivision that you serve. The subdivisions are of substantially equal population. They do follow precinct lines where practicable, and they are compact and contiguous. And so it is my belief that these proposed boundary lines do comply with the Nebraska Elections Act. They are here for your consideration, for your comment. I would note that we are subject to certain deadlines. The board must certify the newly created subdivision boundaries by December 30th of this year. So after you review, if you agree, then my next step will be to communicate this certification to the election commissioners' offices of those 4 counties. And if not, then we'll work with you between now and December 30th to ensure that that happens. Happy to answer any questions.
Mark, does our vote today count for certification of the board?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, and then I'd like to also say, I'd like to thank you and Rick Kubat for all the work you did with the county, and a lot of going through data and everything and getting things done the way you did. We all appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Mark, are we, last time you and I had talked on the phone, I guess I understood, maybe I misunderstood, but at some point in time, the UNO folks that drew these maps were going to provide something, at least with like the boundary lines, for example, you know, on the, let me just, what street is that? What street is that? I mean, just so that you could look at them and know what the boundary lines are. I mean, I assume that most of us would know, but it would be nice because they've got Dodge marked, as I'm pointing out here. I mean, I know from experience that this is West Maple Road. It says it right here, but I don't have any idea what those are.
Yep, they did provide that. I forwarded it to you all. I will forward it around again.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, it's a filter that shows every street, and so the closer you zoom in, I mean, it'll show.
Okay.
Expand it,
Yep.
it'll show every street.
Okay, my mistake.
But I will resend that.
No, if you've already sent it, I guess I just didn't zoom in far enough, and I was using an Apple product, so maybe it's a I'll try it again on a PC.
Certainly reach out to me, and I'll make sure
Okay.
you get what you need.
Thank you.
I had the same issue. I tried to zoom in far enough, but when I did, it just kind of got out of whack.
Good to know. Okay, I can touch base with you after as well. I want to make
Okay.
sure that you see all of those street names.
Okay.
Jim, I had my troops aligned along Dodge Street just in case you
Well, I've got the fine folks of UTAN on my army now, Tim, so. I also want to thank the great work that the UNO College of Public Affairs and CPAR department has done working with you and Rick on this. They work with many jurisdictions and local boards, and it's been quite challenging given the delay in the census numbers getting out, so great work by everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Mark, were we charged for that work, or is that part of their public service that they do?
We engaged in a contract with that division of UNO, and I believe that contract was approximately $7,000 that we paid them for this work.
Okay. Thank you, and Rick and everybody for a great job.
You bet. Okay, turning to tab 12. Let me make sure I've got my agenda. Tab 12 is a recommendation to authorize the district to enter into a settlement agreement with the Omaha Public Power District in late May of 2020. The area of 24th and Vinton unfortunately experienced a water main break. Like many water main breaks, and this was a large water main, a 16-inch main, like many water main breaks, that water causes damage to paving, to facilities under the paving, and this particular intersection is quite congested in terms of underground facilities. The district actually has 2 large water mains, a 30-inch and a 16-inch in this area. Well, that water damaged underground power facilities that Oppd owns and operates. And through negotiations with the folks, the team at Omaha Public Power District, my division, Mike Conrad, so appreciation to him, have negotiated a proposal where the district will split the costs, which would result in the district M.U.D. paying Oppd $167,727, which would bring this claim to a close. And it's my recommendation that we move forward with that. Happy to answer any questions on that.
I don't have a question, just a comment. It's hard to believe that main was installed in 1889?
1889,
Wow.
And as I was talking with the Director of Infrastructure Integrity, Masania, they review these, and so they'll go through a whole analysis, and he said this is a good main. It's in good shape. We don't have any break history on it, but they did replace They did replace a section of it, but they didn't replace the whole darn thing, so.
I think that was the year Jack was first elected to the board.
Just to share with my colleagues, in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, I'll be abstaining from this vote, given the fact that a family member of mine was negotiating on OPPD's behalf, so I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Mark Doyle, President. I'd like to comment that since we're talking about a main that was installed in, did you say 1889?
1889.
If the pictures along the hallway now that we've preserved, you'll see a few sections where, you know, the size of the gangs that installed those mains and what it was like to dig them with shovels. And there's a car in that picture, so that was long after 1889, I think, right? So, yeah, it just reminds us the daunting task that we have ahead to not just assume that particular main is bad, because the whole section is not bad. They were cast in place, and many of those cast iron mains, unbelievably, are still in great shape, yet we have mains from the 90s that are breaking because of, you know, different installation techniques. We didn't wrap them at that time, so it's amazing. It really is, the infrastructure that we're dealing with, and it's mostly in the older parts of town that we're devoting our budgets to, but it isn't. It's all over town. So great. I can't help but comment when the topic comes up, because that's going to be a discussion later in this meeting.
I can't help to comment on that. I believe one of the pictures is from the 1880s.
Okay.
And it's a horse-drawn buggy with a big piece of pipe,
Okay,
like
I saw it.
6-8 feet.
Yeah.
And so I think to myself, these folks are putting in 6 feet at a time, carrying it on a horse-drawn buggy. It's pretty amazing.
And it's no small diameter either on that. It's amazing. We're dealing with something really special here.
It is. All right, moving right along here, tab 13 is a recommendation to enter into a settlement with the law firm of Falk Spinasanta. This matter is still, the settlement of this claim settles a portion of a claim that is still in litigation. I've communicated details to you separately via attorney-client privilege. I'm happy to answer questions. Would prefer those questions to be handled in closed session, again, for the reason that the matter is still in litigation. But with your approval, I will work with outside counsel to resolve this one portion of that total claim. And with that, thank you very much, Mr. McGowan.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, now we'll go to Mr. Cooper, review the proposed condemnation.
Good morning. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a staff attorney with M.U.D, and I'm here to ask for condemnation authority for 3 small pieces of property near 16th and Ohio. As the letter to the board indicates, we've had some difficulty getting a hold of these 3 people, so we have not made a formal agreement to them. And so we are looking to publish our condemnation and go to court that way, putting our funds into the court for the landowners if they ever show up. I would note that 2 of the properties, one is already has tax liens on it for non-payment, one is delinquent, and the other is current. Any questions?
Justin, this, just to clarify, this is not a taking of the property. This is just for an easement to replace some water service?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very small section bordering 16th Street or Ohio.
Thanks.
And will the notice being placed in the newspaper presumably serve lawfully as notice so they can access the property, especially since they're non-responsive to letters or calls? Right. Or?
Well, we'll publish the, when we go to the condemnation action, we'll publish that notice of that hearing in the paper. Getting service on someone that you can't find has been really difficult. But we'll retrace our steps that we did in this one. We contacted all the neighbors. We sent certified letters to all known addresses that they had. We've talked to the city about helping us locate these people. And so far, we haven't been able to reach them, except for the one property, Mr. Robinson, who appears to be there and has ignored my last effort, which was I taped my letter right to his front door to say, hey, come talk to me because I need to talk to you about this authority to get our water main in. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Rick, you can give us a quick update? It's that time of the year again, starting?
It is. We're going to be starting here in early January with the short session of the Nebraska legislature. Because of that, I wanted to give you an update on 4 items that will probably be getting some consideration down in Lincoln. And those 4 items are the American Rescue Plan, known as ARPA, the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, the discussion revolving around interconnecting the Lincoln water systems with the Metropolitan Utilities District, and then the 4th item, LB 406, the legislation that is considering a lake on the lower Platte River. So there's kind of a lot here, and I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of each. The American Rescue Plan, in March of 2021, Congress passed this $1.9 trillion act known as ARPA, intended to combat the pandemic's harm to public health and the economy. ARPA funds were distributed to states, counties, cities, and tribal governments. Unlike the previous CARES Act, recipients have much more latitude in allocation determinations. The state of Nebraska will receive slightly more than $1 billion in ARPA funds. Both Douglas County and the City of Omaha received roughly $110 million. And I guess if I can back up a little bit, all entities have really received half of their allocated amount. They received half roughly 3 or 4 months ago, and they'll be getting their second tranche or the remaining pool of funds probably, I would say, in the next 6 months. As of today, right now, these ARPA funds need to be spent by December 31st of 2024. There is some conjecture that due to inflationary pressures, labor shortages, supply chain issues, that Congress could extend some of these deadlines. But as of right now, for ARPA, it's December 31st, 2024. Just to give the board a heads up, M.U.D. did seek $10 million each from the City of Omaha, Douglas County, and the state of Nebraska for our lead service line replacement program. We estimate that we currently have roughly 17,000 customers that have lead service lines. In today's dollars, that would be estimated at $120 million in collective liability of our customers. And again, these are lead service line owned by our customers, so technically it's their liability. In addition to the lead service line replacement, M.U.D. in conjunction with the Omaha Public Power District asked all 3 of those entities for $2 million each to supplement a specific homeowner utility assistance program. So that would have been for the City of Omaha requesting $1 million for OPPD, $1 million for M.U.D., and the same for Douglas County and the state of Nebraska. In terms of our ARPA request, slightly more optimistic that we may have a better opportunity at the state level for garnering some of those funds. I'm sorry, I've got to do this. My glasses are fogging. And moving on to the Infrastructure and Investment Act, this was just passed in November, where Congress passed this $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Funding is to be allocated over 5 years. The state of Nebraska is estimated to receive roughly $2.5 to $3 billion under the act. Most of it is being earmarked for roads and bridges. There's also a substantial portion of these funds that will flow through other federal agencies, including the Bureau of Reclamation, the Army Corps, and the USDA. $358 million of these dollars are going to flow to the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, and it's going to go into the state's revolving fund over a 4 to 5 year period of time. Lead service line replacement would be an eligible application for those funds. One of the more frustrating parts about the revolving funds, though, is they bring some of the red tape associated with Davis-Bacon Act and American Iron and Steel requirements. The district will be exploring the possibility of using the revolving funds, and we'll be talking to NDE about the potential of using those funds for lead service line abatement. Moving on to subject number 3, the interconnect. The City of Lincoln is considering an alternative water supply to meet future demands. Currently, 100% of Lincoln's water supply is provided by the Lower Platte River. Lincoln is considering either an additional water treatment facility in the future on the Missouri River or potentially hooking into our system. M.U.D. is right now in the process of concluding a capacity study that should be done in the first quarter of 2022. This study looks at M.U.D.'s current and future capacity needs and will provide detailed information on the district's capacity for possible future wholesale agreements. It is understood that any potential future wholesale agreement with Lincoln would need to be in the financial best interest of our ratepayers without jeopardizing our own reliable water supply. This is only brought to your attention because Lincoln could, with the amount of money that's being held down in Lincoln, or that the state is receiving with some of these federal dollars, the City of Lincoln, I believe, is contemplating seeking some funds for their alternative water supply. So we wanted to give you a heads up in that sense. Ultimately, when we get far enough down the road where we have more information to the board, all that information will be provided to you, and you, the decision makers, will be weighing what's in the best interest of our customer owners in terms of the potential interconnect. And then, I'm sorry, but my final subject matter, and I know I'm hitting you with a lot today, that this is LB 406, and this is a mouthful, but it is the Statewide Tourism and Recreational Water Access and Resources Sustainability Committee. Our legislators had some fun with this one, otherwise known as Star Wars. So I'm going to just refer to it as Star Wars. The Star Wars Committee contracted with HDR to assess potential investments for 3 parts of the states, primarily looking at recreational opportunities. Item 1 is Lake McConaughey in Keith County. The other area they're looking at is Lewis and Clark Lake and Niobrara Recreational Area up in Knox County. And of interest to the district, they're looking at potentially a lake in the Lower Platte River. M.U.D., we had the opportunity in September. There was a legislative hearing at Mahoney State Park. And at that hearing, both the City of Lincoln and M.U.D. made it explicitly clear to the committee that items 1 and 1A of any study of a potential lake in the Lower Platte, that they carefully look at issues revolving water quality and quantity as far as the public water supply. It was relayed to them that that Lower Platte River is 100% of Lincoln's capacity, and although where they're looking at is downstream from Platte West, that Lower Platte River supplies, as you know, 50% of M.U.D.'s capacity. That was followed up with a meeting down in Lincoln with the Speaker of the Legislature, Mike Hilgers, who chairs the Star Wars Committee. Myself and a representative from Lincoln met with Speaker Hilgers again to convey to him how important that Lower Platte River is for the public water supply. So I know there was a lot there. Thank you. More than happy to answer any questions should you have any.
A clarification, Rick. you said 50% of MUD's water supply comes from the lower Platte. Did you mean 50% of the total or 50% of what Platte West produces?
I would say 50% of the total, just in the sense that, as far as collective MGD, our Florence facility it would be considered to be half of what we're permitted as far as our permitted amount of water.
Okay, so the other two then would be the other 50%, Platte South and Platte West.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
For Mark Doyle, President, a note of clarification, Director Friend. We know that if you look at the capacity of those two treatment plants that take water from the well fields around the Platte River, they're larger than half, but the permitting that Rick mentions only allows us to pump about 50% of Platte West on average. So, but the two together, if those regulations ever go away, it'll be more than half. I think Platte West is about 105 capacity, MGD. Platte South, on a good day, and I think we're back up to it after all the well field rehabilitation, is 60. I'm not sure after the flooding, but I think we're back up to that, and I can get corrected if I'm wrong. And then Florence is about 152. So that's a good question, because the actual capacity is greater, but the permitting in order to build Platte West makes it about half and half. Fair?
Yes.
Yeah, very important, because when we study capacity for the other topic you mentioned, regional water, Platte West, the permitting requirements, which we always are looking at, are on the table, because that would allow that plant to pump at a higher rate if and when those go away. So, good question, though. I'm trying to see if I remember my history a little bit here.
Rick, you mentioned decision makers, obviously the M.U.D. board and the folks in Lincoln. Would there have to be legislative action from the legislature if we were both to come to agreement over a service contract?
In terms of, I would say if it's a wholesale agreement, no. It would be akin to other wholesale agreements that the district has entered into with other communities. In terms of the legislature, the reason why I'm bringing it to your attention is I don't know for certain, but Lincoln may very well ask for some of these federal funds to be set aside for that kind of project.
So it's just for the funds that we're talking about, Lincoln has to be involved.
That's right.
The legislature, I should clarify. Okay.
And I'm going to know a lot more about where the city of Lincoln's at, I would say sometime in early January.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, just a general question. It doesn't apply directly to this, indirectly, but did the City of Omaha get any assistance from these plans on their sewer project at all?
What I would say is with their $110 million in ARPA funds, the City of Omaha could, to the degree that they wanted to, allocate a portion of those funds for their sewer-related projects. And I know that the City of Omaha is going over how they're going to be spending those funds right now, and whether or not sewer rises to the top for allocations, that would be a kind of a Mayor Stother question.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because we, M.U.D, should be pushing the city to try and get those, because we collect the sewer funds on our bill, and it's always an irritant to the customers and everything. So if they got funds and we could reduce that bill, that's good for all of us.
For sure.
And then a short add-on to the lead service line discussion. Yes, the customers own their water service lines, but as we replace infrastructure, you have supported us, and we've adopted a policy that if we touch it, we replace it. So we are replacing customer service lines, whether they're lead or not. But in the case of lead, we replace the entire service line. And when I say we have partners that do our service line work. We, along with partners, do our main installations and rehabilitations. So not only is it in our best interest to do anything we can to procure funds to replace lead service lines for a couple reasons. We're replacing them, and this would lower the burden on our ratepayers because we can get out ahead of it and simply reconnect. But it's also, it is a health issue, and it's an environmental issue, and this is truly in the older part of our district. There is no question about that. Those 17,000 that Rick mentioned, we have an inventory. We're ahead of other utilities in that. We're, in a way, we're shovel ready, but the devil's in the details. It's a monumental task if all this money would flow to us to get the partners like we have on the water main side. But we're going to do everything we can to get funds that are earmarked for lead service replacements so we can manage that and get that done. It's a golden opportunity. I don't know if we're 100% optimistic. It's going to be a challenge regardless, and it's a big task, but this is one of those issues that affects truly the older part of the system. And I think Rick said 125 million, give or take. Is that what you said? And if you divide that by 17,000, we use about 7,000 per lead service line as an average.
Yes.
It can be more, they can be less. There's a lot of things that happen here. We need permission. But we're optimistic, and we're going to work as hard as we can to get those funds. I think Director McGowan, you asked me about this, and a few of the others have. So we're committed to it. We'll do everything we can, and it would be putting our customers in a better position.
For sure.
So thanks for bringing that up.
So for clarification, we're still in conversation with the governor's office and with individual senators about finding that pot of money for the lead lines. It's not in any piece of paper that's been discussed or presented to us.
Yes. I would say in terms of the ARPA allocations, as I understand it, the conjecture down in Lincoln is what's going to happen is that the governor's office is going to submit something akin to a budget to the Appropriations Committee on how he would like to see that roughly north of $1 billion in ARPA funds spent. And if you're not in the governor's budget, then you probably need to find a state senator to bring a standalone appropriations bill. So in a perfect world, we will be having conversations with the executive branch. The path that you want to be is hopefully hopefully be within that governor's requested budget allocation. But it's going to all go through the legislative process, and it's going to be an interesting season down in Lincoln, given that revenues are up and that these federal dollars are flowing into the state's budget. So there's going to be a lot of debate on how that money is best spent. Sorry about the long-winded answer to that one.
No, I appreciate it. I just remember when we had ARA in '09 when I first joined the legislature, and there just seemed to be memory loss about where the money came from and what the stated purpose was by the time it got to our state in particular. So I guess I'm fingers crossed that doesn't happen in the same way, or that we have enough advocates to get the money where it's supposed to go. So,
where it's intended to go. And
Correct.
We do have some things going for us, and we did provide the Appropriations Committee testimony about 6 weeks ago, that, hey, the money's intended for this. It serves a significant public health issue, and this is important. I know there's banter down in Lincoln that they want to fund transformative projects and shovel-ready projects, and they don't want to fund ongoing programs that have no end in sight. And to that degree, I would argue that this would fulfill those aspects of the kind of program that they're looking at.
Yeah, it's clear when you look at the breakout for water. It's clear as a bell that a certain portion, I don't remember how many billion in the country, is for lead service line replacement. It's never been clearer. So we're going to, what that means, I know I'm putting pressure on us, Rick, but we will make our case. And there is an end in sight. 17,000 are replaced. It's done. There is. It's truly, and I'd call it transformative. So, thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick, real quick, what's the start and end dates for the short session?
I believe the start date is January 5th, and then they're going to be done in mid-April, like April 15th-ish. I don't know if the speakers put his official calendar, but historically, that's about the time they're done, is the middle to latter part of April.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rick. Mr. Shafford now review some proposed revision to the investment policy statement.
Good morning. I'm Joe Shafford. I serve as the district's chief financial officer, and behind tab 15, you'll find a memo that relates to a required change to our investment policy statement related to the pension plan. I would describe this as kind of a housekeeping issue. So during the November board meeting, the board heard a synopsis of the recently completed experience study for the pension plan, where you look at actual emerging experience versus what was assumed when we do pension valuations. Ms. Beckham delivered that message, and in that message there were several recommended changes to assumptions, one of which was a recommended reduction in our assumed rate of return for the pension from 6.9% to 6.75%. And this is the housekeeping change that's required to the investment policy statement for the pension plan, because that's spelled out therein. So that's really all that we're changing in this document. The OPEB investment plan document, it does not require a change, because the return assumption in there is the highest return possible given the risk that the plan is willing to take, and that's described in the document. So there are no other changes to this document. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Joe. We will now proceed to the public hearing on the proposed 2022 gas and water budget, which will be presented by Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer Joseph Shafford, and I believe Gina Patterson's going to have a little part of that too.
Yes. So again, Joe Shafford, serve as the Chief Financial Officer for the district. Behind tab 16, you will find our proposed 2022 budget for the water and gas departments. As Director McGowan mentioned, Geneva Patterson, our Manager of Rates and Regulatory Affairs, will begin the discussion with proposed rate actions for 2022, the impact of these rate actions, as well as anticipated increased pass-through costs on the bill for our average residential customer. And then she will also include in her comments a comparison of costs to be incurred by our customers versus those in other metro areas. At the conclusion of Geneva's remarks, I'll discuss some of the detailed spending contained in the budget, as well as its impact on cash balances and our income statement. There are additional supporting schedules in the appendix that will not be presented. So with that, I would ask Ms. Patterson to join me at the podium, or take over my spot at the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Good morning. I am Geneva Patterson, Manager of Rates and Regulatory Affairs here at the district. And as Joe said, I will be presenting the 2022 gas and water rate increase proposal for this year's budget. So this year's budget contains a 4% increase to the average residential customer's overall bill, and that's going to be recovered via a 7.8% increase to the commodity component of water, and that 7.8% increase, will be applicable to residential customers and general commercial customer classes. This year we are proposing a tiered rate increase, and the second part of that, thank you, Jay. Thank you. And the second tier to that is a 5.6% increase to the commodity component of rates for large industrial and large commercial and wholesale customer classes. And the two-tiered approach recognizes that and addresses the fact that the 7.5% increase to larger volumes would result in a higher impact to high volume use customers. And so we want to keep the rates as affordable as possible for all customer classes while recovering the necessary revenue to carry on. By averaging the bills for each month for the average residential customer, this results in a 4% increase compared to last year's budget. And that 4% increase equates to a $15 annual impact and a $1.28 per month to the average residential customer. The proposed increase generates approximately $5.5 million in incremental revenue and is necessary to fund the cost of operations, to fund an increased rate of water main replacement, condition assessment, and rehabilitation, and to fund the debt service costs for a planned bond issuance of $67 million, which will fund capital improvement plans for the Florence and Platte South water treatment plants, as well as the construction of the West Dodge pump station and other system improvements. And following my portion of the presentation, Mr. Schaffer will elaborate on those costs further. No increase is being proposed to the fixed components of the water rates this year, so no proposed increase to the fixed water infrastructure replacement charge, and no increase is proposed to the fixed customer service charge. So I'll say the presentation this year is very similar to past years, and so this chart is familiar. We are comparing 2021's budget for the average residential customer to 2022's budget for the average residential customer. And the bar on the left represents 2021's budget, where we budgeted that the average customer would pay $383 for the year. And the bar on the right represents the 2022 budget that is being proposed and reflects that the average customer will pay approximately $398. At the bottom of each bar, I've labeled the usage, and so usage is not projected to change for the upcoming budget year, and both years are based on 104 CCF, which every year I realize I stand up here and say 1 CCF is equal to 748 gallons, so in translation, that's almost 78,000 gallons of water that the average residential customer uses in a year. And so I hope that information is helpful. So starting at the bottom of each section and working our way to the top, we see that the service charge in green and the fixed water infrastructure replacement charges in the teal or lighter blue color remain unchanged. And again, there's no increase to either of those components. And the next two sections, the orange and the black, those sections represent the base commodity charge and the commodity-related infrastructure replacement charge. And those two sections are where we see the $15 a year annual increase to the total bill. The yellow section at the top of each bar represents the 2% payment to municipalities that we are required to pay by statute. And the change is small enough that that 2% doesn't increase. So again, overall, the average residential customer's annual bill is expected to increase from $383 to $398 per year. And again, each year we participate in a survey that is put on by Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, where they request participation from all across the country. They ask each participant to calculate their bill with rates that are in effect in January of 2021, and to calculate that bill for 10 CCF of water or 7,480 gallons. I'll have to add that to the slides next year for a 5/8" water meter. And the district's placement is represented by the green bar, and we are 14th out of the 40 participants this year. That's where we placed in January, but if you recall, last year we had an increase to water rates that was effective May 1st, and so I thought it was appropriate to add that as well. And so we increased from 14th to 15th place out of 40, so still very reasonable. And then the black bar represents where we will place if the rates that we are proposing today are passed. But keep in mind that the other participants in the survey, that's their 2021 rates that's compared to. But even with our rate increase and theirs holding steady, we're still about midway in the survey. For the gas side, this year's budget contains no increase to the gas commodity charge, the gas service charge, or the gas infrastructure replacement charge. Cash reserves that are on hand will be spent down in order to address modestly increased operating costs while maintaining a strong liquidity. The average residential gas customer, however, is projected to see an increase in their gas bill this year, which amounts to approximately $191 or 32%. And that increase is driven by higher pass-through costs as shown in this next slide. And so when we talk about pass-through costs, those are costs that we collect and then they are remitted to others. And so this slide breaks down all of the costs that our average bill consists of, but this first indented bullet and the second indented bullet group those costs by pass-through costs and then costs to fund district operations. So that first section there, the pass-through costs, the cost of gas, which again we anticipate will increase by approximately $184 for the year for the average residential customer compared to last year's budget. The 2% statutory payment that we're required to remit to cities will also increase by approximately $4. And then the transportation demand charges we anticipate will decrease. And so the transportation demand charge, is the charge that we pay to reserve space on the pipeline to get the gas from its original location to our service area. And the cost itself is not decreasing. However, we anticipate increased firm customer growth, and so we're spreading that over a larger customer base. So the per customer cost should increase by about $1 for the year.
Before you move on, can I ask a quick question about the
Sure.
slide that's up there now? And I remember this, so remind me if my recollection is incorrect. As the commodity cost for gas increases, so too increases the 2% statutory payment.
That's correct.
So as the price to the customer goes up, there is a reward, and I hate to use that word, but I don't know what, I mean, the municipalities reap a reward from that because it's 2% of whatever the cost is.
That's correct.
Isn't that interesting?
That is correct. And so that second indented bullet represents the costs to fund district operations. And so our peak shaving costs, those are primarily the costs related to fund bond carrying costs for our LNG plant expansion. And we anticipate that that will impact the average residential customer's annual bill by $5 a year. The commodity charge, which is, the cost that they pay, for the gas, that base commodity charge. And again, increased customer base. And then the service charge and the gas infrastructure replacement charge, no change is proposed. And so the total of those two sections add up to the $191 that you see there. Let me see what I'm sure. And then this graph here is just a graph of that same information, so that first section that we discussed, the pass-through components, this is a comparison of what they were in 2021 versus what they will be, what they are projected to be in 2022. And as you can see, that blue section is where we see the drastic increase from $221 to $405. And then this chart is the second indented bullet that we discussed earlier, and it represents the cost to fund M.U.D. operations. And again, 2001 is on the left, 2021, and then 2022 is on the right. And those costs are pretty constant from year to year. You see the change in the peak shave and
Geneva, could you go back one chart? I have a question. I didn't see it change it real quick.
Sure.
The total bill for our customers is going from 287 to 474, correct?
That is the total of the pass-through cost.
That's the pass-through, okay.
Yes, and if you add that to the total of the M.U.D. funds
Okay.
for operation, that's
I guess
the total.
I have two questions, one for Joe and one for Gina. Joe, or you can answer this. If a customer has a budget bill, like my budget's set in June, so it was set before these high gas costs anticipated. So my budget's going to be kind of low during this month compared to my actual. Can I pay extra each month if I send in $25 extra? Will it apply automatically to my account and over under?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if it applies automatically to the unpaid balance or if it applies to that month's budget payment, but that I will find out and let you know
Because
for sure.
if my budget's set at $100, but because of gas costs, I get billed every month $160, I could send in $25, $30 extra. I want to know if that would apply to my payoff and reduce that amount that carries over to the next budget year.
I will say that we do look at those budget amounts on a monthly basis, and so those budget calculations are calculated for the next 12 months, and so each month, depending on your anniversary date of when you began that budget, we adjust those budget factors, and we already know what the City of Omaha's, sewer rates are going to be, and so we use Omaha as the basis for this projection.
So my budget's set in June. It'll stay in the same till next June?
It will stay the same for next June.
And see, and that's my point, because of the higher gas cost, I may be under-recovered, or I may underpaying what I should be paying. And so if I want to know if I pay extra, does that go to reduce that shortfall for the next budget year?
It will. Thinking about it, it will, because everything when you calculate that new budget amount, everything that's been paid is included in what your balance due is.
Okay.
And so, and it may, I'm just kind of thinking through what the system does. It may, I don't believe it changes your budget amount for the next month. I'm pretty sure, but again, I will check that for sure and get back to you.
And I guess my concern is, with the higher gas costs, and you see the pass-through going up significantly this year, people that have a budget plan set, I'm concerned that they're going to not be paying enough, and next budget year, when their budget is set, they're going to owe the district several $100s, which will increase their budget for the future a lot. And,
yes.
And so I'm concerned to levelize that. My question to Gina, should we send out a communication to our customers about the higher gas costs, which we already have, and everything, and the fact that if your budget has been set before the impact of the gas costs, you may want to consider paying extra each month, or to ask the district to reset your budget based on that higher gas cost. So like for me, next June, if my budget's $100, I pay $100 all month, all year. I don't want to have my budget next year be $225. Avoid that big spike. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely understand that. I will definitely check and make sure how the system
And
does
Gina,
that.
can we change if I request it, can I change my budget each month?
I'm pretty
or just
sure you
pay
can.
extra?
I'm pretty sure you can.
See, and that's what I think our customers need to know, they have that opportunity to avoid that big spike in the next budget cycle.
Gina Langles, Senior Vice President, Chief Operation Officer. Are you specifically asking from the residential side, or are you asking for the commercial, industrial, or all, or what?
Residential.
Because I'm trying to do that
I'm
residential.
concerned about the residential side being hit with a big budget increase next year because of
Absolutely.
not having their budget reflect the higher gas costs we're experiencing.
Okay, we'll talk about that and see what we can do to get that done.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're on the topic, I think it would be great if you have the extra $25, but remembering to communicate for the folks who don't have the extra about what could happen or what resources we have.
Yes, that's a good point. As a reminder, for customers who pay on their paper bill, there's a box to check where they can add additional payments that will go to support others who may need assistance with their bills. And then also electronically on our website, I believe there's also a place where that can occur.
You know, keep in mind that many people probably still have things automatically withdrawn, and so that would be another factor you'd want to think about. I suppose if you do, I pay the bill every month, and so actually I do that. Sometimes I'll just add an additional small amount onto it, anticipating at the end I could have to pay a whole lot more. And I think that's fine for somebody that writes it out every month, sends in a check. But if you've got automatic withdrawal, they're probably not, I would guess, want to tamper with that until it reaches the end of its cycle. So just another thing to keep in mind about that.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about the residential next year, all of a sudden, saying, whoa, what happened to my budget, you know? So.
And I think we've made it through this slide. This is the slide that shows the components of the customer's bill, the components that are related to M.U.D. operations. And then this final chart is those two prior charts combined. And so you will see that on the left, 2021, we budgeted that the average residential customer would spend $597, and then $788 is what is anticipated for 2022. And again, the majority of that is for the pass-through cost of gas, that higher cost of gas. And so again, our participation in the Memphis Light Gas and Water's National Survey comparison on the gas side is shown here. Bills were calculated using January 2021 gas rates for 20 decatherms of gas. And while we're not the lowest in this survey, we are second to lowest. And I'll be curious to see where we shake out in the upcoming year. But the green bar represents 2021, and the black bar represents 2022. 2022's calculation is slightly lower than 2021's calculation because of the costs related to the LNG project didn't appear in 21's budget in January. And so that was a slight little anomaly. But
Jenny, but this doesn't include the polar vortex either, which we weathered much better than most of these.
You're absolutely right. It does not. That occurred in February. And our customers saw, we anticipate about an $8.61 increase for the, which we'll recover. We recovered April through December. And in comparison to other utilities, I know one utility, their customers are anticipated to have to pay an additional $360, which they'll recover over 3 years. And so we'll be done in this month, actually. And so that, again, has a lot to do with our peak shaving facilities and keeping our gas rates low. So, and then, again, because most of our customers are both gas and water customers, these two final graphs show what their bills look like combined. And so again, the majority of that, that gas pass-through cost is evident here. And so yeah, in total, their bill will increase from $980 to $1,186. That's about $206 a year. So those gas pass-through costs are getting us. And so, are there any additional questions? Okay.
One quick question. No increase in our gas increase. How many years in a row has it been now?
I want to say 4 or 5.
See, and I want to applaud all the employees for all their hard work and finding ways to do work cheaper and better, because 4 or 5 years, no increase in the gas costs, it shows it on that graph. So we ought to all be proud and thanks to everyone for the hard work.
Thank you. That concludes my portion of the presentation. Before I hand the floor over to Mr. Shafford, I would like to thank Jill Albers. She's the rate analyst that works with me. We are a 2-person department, and we start working on this in June, and it's months and months of data. And it's very short in comparison to what Mr. Shafford is going to present, but it takes a lot to get to this point. So thank you, Jill. I appreciate your efforts.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geneva. Again, Joe Schaffert, Chief Financial Officer for the district. I will just talk a little bit about kind of how we're going to spend the funds that Geneva addressed there. So the first pie chart is just to give you a sense for the magnitude of what we're talking about in the budget. That shows $505 million of spending. This excludes the debt service costs for the bonds outstanding on both sides. That would add about another $32 million to this. So the total is $537 million. Geneva thanked Jill, and I would like to thank Jill and Geneva as well. When she talked about June and all the work, a lot of it's calls from Joe on run this scenario, because that's what we're trying to fund with palatable rate structure. So many, many scenarios, as you might imagine. I'm going to call out just a couple items on a couple of the pieces of the pie here. Not a surprise, gas purchase cost is the largest piece of the pie, made worse by what's going on with natural gas prices. You can see it's estimated that we will spend 34% of the total spend, or about $172 million. Now, Geneva described it very accurately that this is a pass-through cost. We don't mark up the cost of gas. But I think the thing that's worth calling out is we take many measures to minimize the cost of gas for our customers via the efforts of our Energy Acquisitions Group, which is Jim Knight, Dave Belair's, and Pat Brennan. You've heard about efforts of CPEP, the Central Plains Energy Project. We also do other prepaid deals in the form of TIAC, Peak, and Black Belt. So in 2022, though the gas costs are going up pretty dramatically, our customers will benefit directly to the tune of $4.4 million because of those efforts. Additionally, some of those prepaid deals on CPEP generate rebates. That's an additional $3.2 million to be received in 2022, which are spent directly on gas department initiatives. If you look at the 5-year window that we use when we plan for the whole budget exercise, that like benefit, that $7.6 million, is $53.1 million for that 5-year period. So we don't sit on our hands, we don't mark up cost of gas, but I think, exert exceptional effort to lower gas costs, and I think that's necessary to call that out. The only other thing I'd point out is on the payroll and benefit costs slice of the pie, you see a dotted line. That just represents the fact, or alludes to the fact, that we have construction crews that self-perform work. So some of the capital dollars are performed by our own people. That's the dotted line. So there are assumptions that are shared across both departments or divisions of the company. That's what this slide alludes to. The 2.25% general increase, as we refer to it, is right out of the labor agreement, which, hard to believe, expires March 31 of 2023. The SPA population receives the same general rate increase. And just to give you a sense, order of magnitude, those rate increases result in about $1.6 million of increased compensation for our existing employee base. People are also eligible for progression increases if they're not at their top of their rate range. That adds about another $1.2 million. So payroll costs are up about $2.8 million just by virtue of raises to existing employees. The other thing, obviously, that we think is very important and take a lot of pride in is our value of funding promises to our employees. You can see the pension contribution is going to be $12 million in 2022. As it has been our practice, we try to fund it higher than what the actuary would say we have to, because we're forever trying to pay down that unfunded liability. So based on our estimates, we think that $12 million is about $1.2 million higher than would be necessary. And just as a point of reference, the 2021 contribution is $11.6 million. The board will also recall at the end of 2020, our funded rate was 94%, which is phenomenal. And also, when Ms. Beckham presented the experience study, the lower return assumption does impact that funded percentage. So all else being held equal, that funding percent would drop to 92.9%, still very, very strong funding. So in addition to the return assumption, the other thing that does impact the contribution is the fact that employees are on a 5-year schedule of increasing the amount that they contribute to their own pension plan. It will rise from 8% in 2021 to 8.5% in 2022, and then it tops out at 9% in 2023. The other thing I think worthy of call out is Opeb contributions. The board may recall that's a relatively recent change. We set up that trust at the end of 2015 and started contributing to a trust in 2016. Prior to that time, we were using a pay-as-you-go approach, meaning we would fund the retiree claims as they came in. So if you look at the difference in what is part of our cost structure and hence rate structure versus those days, so we're going to be contributing, as the slide shows, $10.8 million in total to Opeb, net district contributions. In the pay-as-you-go era, I just looked at 2020 claims, and if you'd applied the old mentality, the district would have put out $2.3 million. So a significant $8.5 million increase, all in in confirmation of this value the company has with the board support to fund these promises. I think that's pretty significant. Moving on to just a few of the highlights on the water side, you can see that capital is in the budget at $87.1 million. A pretty significant increase from the 2021 budget, $7 million increase. I should also point out during the November budget presentation, when you saw all the details, that number was $97.2 million. I shared with the board at that time, I didn't see how we could develop a rate structure that was palatable to fund everything that was out there. And so for the most part, what you're seeing is a shift in dollars into future periods. The biggest change, of course, was to mains, Pioneer mains and infrastructure mains. You'll see a future slide on that. And we also are deferring some construction equipment to the tune of about $2.2 million. So that's about 9.8 of that 10 million reduction. In terms of what's driving the increase, the slide calls it out pretty clearly. The budget includes replacing 16 miles of cast iron mains in 2022. We also are increasing construction machine purchases. We need to right-size the size and age of that fleet. That has been a lever that we've tended to look to first, and I won't say it's gotten us in trouble, but maintenance costs are certainly up, so we need to spend more money on machines, which we're committed to doing. There really wasn't a slowdown intentional from a financial director perspective in 2021. It was largely supply chain issues that caused problems for us and many of our fellow companies. And then finally, the water construction mains are up. These are the mains that are built for the improvement of the system. And the biggest reason for that is the main in support of the West Dodge pump station. We do have a bond in there for $67 million for Florence CIP, Platt South CIP, West Dodge pump station, and some land acquisition, primarily for water reservoirs. The thing that's noteworthy, I think, about the Florence CIP, in this 5-year planning window, we should pretty much complete the CIP for Florence, which is a huge, huge accomplishment. So here we get into a little bit of a conversation on water infrastructure replacement and condition assessment. Again, we're targeting 16 miles. That is reduced from the 18 miles that was included in what you saw in November. So 31.7 million of spending versus 35.7 million in November. We are going to condition assess 2 miles versus 1 mile in 2021. We have $700,000 related to condition assessment. It's a pretty new tool for us, but we're excited about the potential of condition assessment. In the course of prepping for this meeting, Gina Langle and I had a good conversation with Masa Nia, our Director of Infrastructure Integrity, and he estimates you can perform condition assessment at 5 to 20% of the total cost of a main. Not the same as replacing a main, but a very significant way to improve reliability in the system. So I think that's a great new tool we'll bring into the toolbox. You see some stats on the size of the system. I call out cast iron mains remaining. However, you also see that the efforts are not limited to cast iron mains. Mr. Doyle has commented on many occasions and reminds the team constantly it's a broader problem than that. We're seeing failure of ductile iron main that's considerably newer than the main that was discussed, built in the 1880s. So the problem is broader than that. You know, it's going to be hugely important because as we ramp up, which we are still doing, we need to drive the cost of main replacement down. And one of the ways we're hopeful of doing that is via different installation techniques. We're calling out pipe bursting here because we think that offers some opportunity. 3 to 5 miles looking to replace in this manner in 2022. The challenge with this is, first off, we're learning about this in terms of what savings are out there, but not all mains are candidates for pipe bursting in terms of that being a replacement method. I think the other big message here that's alluded to in the second bullet is we have a much broader approach to maintaining and improving the reliability of our water system. When Mr. Doyle put the stretch objective out there of 25 miles by 25, we have brought so many more tools to bear that we're comfortable that a ramp down in our rate of replacement does not diminish our drive and our, we believe, success in improving system reliability. And the most obvious metric is main breaks. And we have a report card there, so we'll see. But, and we're doing a lot of things, and the board's heard about a lot of these things. Things like leak detection, things like enhanced construction standards in the form of biowrap, zinc-coated mains, and thinner wall diameter ductile iron mains. We're exploring alternate material types in the form of PVC, HDPE. We're looking at pipe bursting as an alternate replacement approach and structural lining. We're also looking at condition assessment. You heard a number of conversations about the sea snake technology that was used on that main on Dodge Street near the hospital. We also have a newly developed hydraulic model that allows for us to run simulations, which are, again, hugely important to various changes we might be proposing operationally. We also have a risk model that enables us to identify and prioritize mains that should be replaced next. We're also doing a lot of data capture and what I call data mining. Once a month, there's a cross-functional meeting that involves infrastructure integrity, engineering, water distribution, and construction. I listen in on those calls as well. And it's, what did we learn from the recent main breaks? I mean, this is phenomenal, the information gathering and capture that's taking place. We're also looking at a number of system operational steps in the form of, variable frequency drives. So you try to eliminate or minimize the hammers in the system that occur, the pressure hammers. We're looking at eye hydrants to model pressure at various points. In fact, the board recently approved buying 20 more of those, 20 more on order that should be deployed by the end of the year, assuming it looks like the construction season will continue to be prolonged with the mild conditions. We will get to the 25 miles, there's no question. It just won't be by 2025. And to use a newly developing phrase for my colleague, Ms. Langle, we're going to go slow to go fast. We are learning a lot from all of these information sources, alternate construction approaches, and what have you. And we want to go at this in the most efficient and effective manner we can, because we have to be cognizant of what it costs. So here's a depiction of what you saw in November versus what the revised goals are. Pretty significant change, but just as a point of reference, in 2021, we think we're going to abandon 14.5 miles at a cost of about 1.7 million per mile for a total spend of $24.2 million. If all we did was continue that steady state rate of replacement and cost, we would spend $121 million in the 5-year period. With the ramp up, we'll spend $175 million for a total of $54 million more. obviously we have to figure out how to pay for that. It signals the need for ongoing modest rate increases, but it also signals the need for our focus on cost reduction. We hope the solution is both, but that's our challenge. And I think we've got, the A team focused on it, but it's a challenge. I think the condition assessment, it's not a coincidence that the replacement plus assessment equals the old. I talked to Mossett kind of smiling, say, wow, conveniently it equals exactly what replacement was. I think the message is we're going to do a combination of things. We still have 25 miles in our focus, but it won't just be replacement. So how does this translate to what financials look like? First off, the projection for 2021 is 9 months of actual, 3 months of budget for the most part for 2021 compared to the 2022 budget. You can see that net income drops by $15 million. In my for-profit days, that would be a big concern, and it's still a concern, but we manage the business by cash flows. And I'll show on the next chart, despite a drop in net income to that extent, which is the biggest feeder of cash available, it doesn't translate directly to cash flow because depreciation is a non-cash expense. So just a couple of quick highlights. The $3.6 million revenue difference, 5.5 of that relates to the incremental revenue we'll generate from the proposed rate increase, offset by we saw higher revenues, higher volumes in 2021 than budget. We always assume a return to normal, whatever that means in this climate. But that's why it nets down to 3.6. The operation and maintenance, pretty large increase at $10.2 million. Several things driving that. Biggest component of which is the labor and benefits associated with 29 staff ads that are in this budget. There were 50 staff ads in what you saw in November. We had to pare that down. And again, the answer, none of them were frivolous. The answer is not no, but not now. So we just need to figure out how to feather those in time. Another significant contributor to that is water service reconnects. Mr. Doyle talked about when we replace infrastructure, we're replacing these services at our cost, even though we don't own them. So that does add quite a bit to the cost per mile when you're replacing cast iron mains. So that's about $2.2 million. The rest of them are smaller things. Those are the big things. Depreciation is driven by higher capital. Bond issuance costs, we have $67 million in planned bond issuance costs at about a 1% issuance cost. That's what that is. Interest goes along for the ride, and the rest is fairly insignificant. So the translation, what happens to cash? Because this is vitally important to getting the bills paid and funding all the initiatives we have in front of us. Net income, you add back depreciation. These are the green as the sources. Depreciation is a non-cash expense. Debt issuance is considered a non-operating cost when you issue, and contributions are what developers pay us for the different mains and subdivisions and what have you. Red ink is ink that accountants don't like, but that's the spend down of cash. That capital doesn't equal what you saw previously because to the extent we're using bond proceeds to fund some of those, that's backed out of that. And the debt service cost is just the principal on the debt. The interest is picked up when you're calculating net income. So you see days cash on hand changed from 370 days to 310 days. I should point out that we segregate cash because we spend cash according to what our rates allow us to do. We have different buckets of money, so to speak. And in the beginning cash balance, the 370-day balance, which was a total balance of $88.5 million, $36.5 million of that was related to infrastructure replacement. So not only the fixed component, the water infrastructure replacement rider, and the piece of commodity rates that contribute to that color of money, so to speak. We exit the year spending some of that cash down, as the days of cash on hand indicate. We are still very, very good from a liquidity perspective, which is highly important to borrowing money. And we're borrowing a fair amount of money, as this slide depicts. So we talked about the bond in 2022 for a lot of those initiatives. I talked about a $67 million number. By year end, we'll pay down some principal, which is why that amount drops a little bit, which is why they all drop a little bit. Then you see a 2025 bond for the ongoing CIP at Platte South. The CIP for Platte South, we don't expect to have completed the document itself till April. So of course, we'll fine tune those estimates before we would ever issue a bond. So it remains to be seen what the bond will ultimately be in 2022 as well as in 2025. So then you have to pay the mortgage or the principal and interest payment, so to speak, and with the amount of debt we have outstanding, that gets pretty significant, as you can see. Again, you see a slight change between 2022 and 2023, and that just represents partial year debt service versus a full year. So we're looking at issuing the bond on the water side in about the June timeframe, because by then, like I said, we'll have the Platte South CIP, and we should know better what that bond really needs to be. Again, not insignificant, but again, I think it's a very important funding philosophy in that if you have significant expenditures that benefit more than one generation of ratepayers, the right way to pay for it's a bond, so you can spread it out to future generations of ratepayers. Plus, we can borrow at very, very good rates because of our credit rating. Flipping along to the gas side. This budget, which you'll see on a future chart, does reflect a spend down of $4.8 million in cash. Again, as Geneva Patterson mentioned, we are not proposing a rate increase on the gas side for, I think, 4th or 5th year in a row, which I think is significant. Capital spending of $92.8 million is $13 million higher than 2021, but the number you saw in November was $101.9 million, so a $9.1 million reduction from what you saw then. Primarily in vehicles, and we're deferring some building expense. And really, one of the deferrals relates to our second construction center. And it's not that we're not going to do it. It's just we felt like we were a little aggressive in terms of the amount of money we could even reasonably spend in 2022, given the fact that design is not even underway yet. So we think it's a more realistic picture here. In terms of what's driving the increase, the LNG expansion is part of the increase. It's accelerated timing of the vaporization phase, which is now projected to be done by the end of 2022. That's a more aggressive time frame than was reflected in the 2021 budget. We're also spending more on motor vehicles. You know, again, the whole fleet, both construction equipment and motor vehicles, we need to right size the age and size of that fleet, which we're focused on doing. LNG, the board approved that. Hard to believe it was, a year ago, October. Profound impact on the polar vortex. It is an insurance policy for our ratepayers. And in terms of how we recover that, and Geneva had it on her stack bar chart, so it's the bond carrying costs are recovered through the GCA, gas cost adjustment component of rates. So when we issue this bond, and I think this is really the ultimate depiction of here's what the insurance policy will cost for the average residential customer. So in 2022, because that bond won't be out there all year, it'll cost our average residential customer $12.40 for the year. In 2023, when the bond's out there for a full year, it'll cost $15.61 or $1.30 a month. For the insurance that removes almost all of the price volatility during things like the polar vortex. That in my mind is a tremendous investment for our customers.
That's a great way to state it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just removes the volatility, which is phenomenal. So again, the thing that even I find myself taking for granted is that we continue down this path of rapidly getting cast iron out of the gas side. We do 40 miles a year, 15 miles with our crews, 25 with contractors. It doesn't just happen. This is amazing what's being accomplished every year. We're down to about 157 miles at the end of 2021. You know, in terms of the system size, about 2,900 miles at the end of 20. The budget, I talked about what's going on with facility costs. So the 2022 budget is down to design costs for a lot of these upcoming facility improvements. There is a bond that is anticipated in 2023 of $51 million. The biggest spend in there, of course, is the second construction center, which is sized at about $38 million now. But we're also going to make investments in our operating center to the tune of about $6.6 million over the 5-year window. And then finally, our original construction center of about $6 million. So again, a lot of facility improvements underway as well. Translating this into what happens to the profit and loss statement. Again, net income is down by $9.3 million. You can see that in the boxed variance column. In terms of the margin or net revenue, we look at the net revenue on the gas side because, you know, the revenue grows with cost of gas, and that doesn't contribute a dime to bottom line. It's a pass-through, as Geneva showed on that chart. So really a lot of things going on that contribute to the 0.6. In 2021, we did experience higher margins, not markup on gas, but with volumes being higher, there's a margin component our customers pay. And the volumes are up in part because of the polar vortex. They're up about 6.5% projected for the year. So that, again, we always assume a return to normal. So that would be a 4.1 million reduction. You offset that by a couple of other things happening. The increased statutory payments that Director Friend very astutely observed that tax goes up with the cost of gas. So higher revenue there, it's offset down below, so no benefit, but it's up in the revenue section, so that contributes $1.2 million. And then also we have higher CPEP rebates anticipated in 2022, about 2.2 million higher. That's the bulk. You net all that together, you get down to about 0.6. O&M, $3.1 million. Vast majority of that's the gas side share of 29 staff ads. As you know, many of our employees serve both sides of the district, and they share in the cost of staff ads. Depreciation goes along for the ride with some capital spending increases. Bond issuance costs, again, 1% of, kind of staggering. We're looking at issuing over $120 million of debt in 2022, so we'll be busy with our friends at Piper Jaffray, and hopefully people buy our bonds at very low rates. And then you see interest expense up. The other net, that $1.2 million, that's the statutory payments that Director Friend observed. It's up in revenue. We pay it back down below. It's a straight pass-through. Here's what's going on with cash flows. There is kind of something interesting to point out here. Maybe it's only interesting to accountants, but I'll share my interest with the board. So you can see, again, same build-up, same spend down, same logic. The capital's net of the bond funding for capital, because obviously we're spending more than $44 million of capital. But what's interesting is despite a very modest decrease in cash of $4.8 million, our days cash on hand dropped by 81 days. And the whole reason for that, the calculation is very simple. You divide total expense divided by 365, and that's your average daily expense. In that expense is cost of gas. So since cost of gas is going up by 80%, our average daily expenses go up by almost $150,000 a day. So virtually the same cash balance drops your days cash on hand, which is a key liquidity measure, by 81 days. Now again, the hope would be we're experiencing an anomaly. In fact, even Geneva just sent her letter yesterday to set the gas rates for December. Because of the warmer conditions, you saw a drop in projected gas price between November and December. Maybe we hope it's not as bad as what we're all saying. And if it's not, our customers won't pay it. We don't incur it, they don't pay it. So that math's very easy. Again, the gas side is going from having almost no debt to pretty significant debt when you issue $120 million worth of debt in a year. Vast majority of that's LNG related. The 41 is infrastructure related. And again, what that funds is we have an existing rate component called the Gas Infrastructure Replacement Rider. It's a fixed component. That doesn't raise enough money to fund this. Again, back to philosophy. We're accelerating the rate we're doing this, and we're going to spread the cost of that acceleration to more than one generation of ratepayer, because clearly it benefits more than one.
Hey, Joe, quick question.
Yeah.
Regarding the days cash on hand, what do the bonding agencies recommend as a benchmark for a sufficient number of days on cash on hand?
It's a great question. I wish it was a real black and white number. It's typically 180 to 250. They never really pin it down exactly. In fact, I share with the board, Fitch just did a review of it was great. We affirmed our very positive rating. But, I pointed out to the Fitch gentlemen, and these are smart financial analysts, I said, liquidity is just getting killed in terms of days cash on hand. And all they can say is, yeah, that's the way the calculation works. Now, they look deeper than that. I mean, they look at a lot of things. They look at, who sets your rates? How influential are you with your board? What's the education process that occurs? I mean, it's a lot of things that drive their rating, much of which are not necessarily black and white.
But we're still in that range
of absolutely.
Sufficient
We're still fine.
funding.
And again, we hope it's a one-year anomaly, because it just paints it's still acceptable, but certainly it doesn't reflect the cash we have on hand. And they look at that as well. But you tend to jump to a number, right? It's like, wow, days on cash really dropped. But it will be for all of the gas companies. So they'll see it everywhere.
Thanks.
Yep. And then finally, the mortgage payments and all the debt. It grows, substantially, but again, still very manageable, because this is all part of the picture. We always give the rating agencies a 5-year view. And they love the fact that we do that, because you're looking out into the future. We make it very clear the board votes on 1 year worth of rate increases. but they're presented with the 5-year view because effectively it's our strategic plan. You got to plan for these things that are coming up. And that's why we show you a 5-year view, and they love the fact we do that. So that is the extent of the comments. I too would like to make some very quick thank yous to Mark Myers and his team, Steph Lemons, Brandon Meisinger, Beth Van Tiger, also Geneva and Jill again. We run many, many cases, as you know, but also, colleagues throughout the district. Poor Gina is a newer member of the senior team, but she either had got to or had to spend more time with Joe during the budget cycle. And I love the fact that this was a very collaborative approach. It wasn't finance telling anything. It was, here's what we're trying to do. We're doing this together. Let's do it. So again, big kudos to the team. The other just housekeeping note I'll make, behind tab 17, there's actually the board letter that relates to the water increase. It basically says what we just told you, so there will not be a separate presentation on that. Are there any questions?
I just want to offer my congratulations. Once again, it gets better every year.
Thank you.
You and your staff, starting with Mark and each person in the chain, should be congratulated for terrific work. You make us look good, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm the spokesperson. It's the colleagues that do the grinding. So.
Well, you do plenty of grinding, Joe, and we appreciate that too. And Tim, I echo what you said. When I see the budget and it's over $500 million, it reminds me this is not a small business.
No.
This is a big business with a big detailed budget. And I think management putting the budget together and sticking to the budget throughout the year. I mean, we do pretty good financially, and I'm very proud of the employees for tightening their belts and not having a rate increase on the gas side and just managing within the budget, because that's very important. And it just reminds me, $500 million is no small business. And we do a good job, you do a good job, everyone does a great job, and thank you for everyone presenting in this budget. It's great. It's always a lot of work. Haven't been there and done that many times in my life. You start in the early summer, like Geneva said, and it doesn't get done until the board approves it in December. So.
Now we can focus on the holidays a little bit.
But thank you.
You bet.
I won't extend it too long, but we do have to thank the board for a couple things. Your support, when I look back at the 5 pillars we brought about 5 years ago, things that needed significant attention. Number one was, they're all number one. Infrastructure replacement, which you're supporting us on. Debt covenants are remaining in compliant. We didn't have debt on the gas side back when I joined the board like some of you. We do now. And we really didn't have a goal for another pillar, which is cash on hand and liquidity. We didn't have any goals. I sat here at a time where we had less than $10 million cash on, maybe almost zero on the gas side. So that takes support, that takes a rate structure. Promises to our employees, I won't reiterate just what a great position we're in on the pension side, but Opeb, the employees, thank you for your support of Opeb. When was it that we started moving away from a pay-as-you-go?
15 is when we put the trust in place.
We have a trust fund now that's building up, and that takes support. And number one of all the number ones is remaining affordable. It is. We are a public utility, and we have to keep that front and center. So we want to thank you, and I would say, Joe, you're right. The education and the collaboration with our board is critically important to do what we need to do. It's hard to say yes if you don't have the information you need. So I have to commend you on the time you all take, and I'm proud of how astute this board is and how well-versed, and when you speak, you can tell, and as our customers and rating agencies can tell, this is a collaborative effort.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy to say yes, so we very much appreciate it.
We all have very informed elevator speeches.
We do,
right?
Yes, we do.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We will now proceed to the public comment portion of the meeting. I'd like to mention that due to COVID-related precautions, members of the public have access to the meeting via WebEx connection that is set up in an adjacent conference room at this headquarters building. We will now invite the public to comment on the district's proposed budget or any other matters presented during the preceding committee meetings. Is there anyone in the conference room who has any comments to share? And if so, please indicate your intentions to the moderator and state your name and address.
No comment from the public, Chairman McGowan.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have any further comments? Okay, it is now 10:09. Let's be back here at 10:15. Is, like to welcome you all to the regular board meeting this morning, December 1st, 2021. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website at the meeting's conclusion. I would like to announce that due to COVID, we are limiting the number of attendees at today's meeting to the extent possible. Unvaccinated people are required to wear masks, and all attendees are encouraged to abide by the 6-foot social distancing rule. In the interest of protecting the health and safety of any members of the public who wish to address the board, they may do so from an adjacent conference room. Thank you for your cooperation in this regard. Roll call, please.
Howard. Here. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook. Here. Friend.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here. I'd like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the boardroom, and a copy is also available in the nearby conference room set aside for members of the public who may attend. And now, for those who wish to participate, we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of minutes for the committee meetings and the regular board meetings held in November.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Capital Expenditures, Director Frost.
Capital expenditures. I move we approve the capital expenditures as presented by Senior Vice President Gina Lango at the committee meeting and is outlined in her letter to the committee dated November 22nd, 2021. Agenda 6. I move we approve the renewal of...
Wait, Jack, we have to take a vote. Do we have a
Second.
second? Tim, you seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Agenda 6, renewal agreement. I move we approve the renewal of the agreement with HGM, the district's water main design consultant, as presented by Director of Engineering Design Jeff Skonovic in the committee meetings and as outlined in his letter to the committee dated November 23rd, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Agenda 7. I move we approve the acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates as presented by Director of Plant Engineering, Stephanie Henn, and as outlined in her letter to the committee dated November 19th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Agenda 8, I move we approve the bids on materials and contracts as presented by Vice President John Zellers and as outlined in the letter from the Director of Procurement, Sherry Meisinger, dated November 19th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Director Friend, item number 9.
Thank you. Item number 9, discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the letter from Mr. O'Brien dated November 22nd.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Number 10, Director Bagley.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I move we approve the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications as presented by Vice President of HR Bonnie Savine at the committee meeting this morning and outlined in her memo dated November 18th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Director Cook, agenda item number 11, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we approve the district election subdivision boundary adjustments as presented at the committee meetings by Senior Vice President Mark Mendenhall and as outlined in his letter and accompanying map dated November 24th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
I'll keep going. Agenda item number 12, I move we approve the settlement of the civil litigation claim with OPPD as presented at the committee meetings by Senior Vice President Mark Mendenhall and as outlined in his letter dated November 24th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Present, not voting.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Number 13, I move we approve the settlement of civil litigation as outlined in Mr. Mendenhall's letter to the committee dated November 24th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Agenda item number 14, I move we approve the proposed condemnation authority with respect to property located at 16th and Ohio Streets as presented by Staff Attorney Justin Cooper and as outlined in Mr. Mendenhall's letter to the committee dated November 24th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Agenda 15.
Agenda item 15, I move that we approve the recommended revisions to the investment policy statement as presented by Senior Vice President Joseph Shafford and as outlined in his letter to the committee dated November 23rd, 2021.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Agenda item number 16, the 2022 gas and water budget. I move we approve the 2022 gas and water budget and the accompanying resolution as presented by Mr. Shafford in the committee meetings.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Agenda item number 17, the proposed water rate increase. I move we approve of the proposed water rate increase and the accompanying resolution as outlined in Mr. Shafford's letter to the committee dated November 24, 2021, and as presented by Manager of Rates and Regulatory Affairs, Geneva Patterson, in the committee meetings.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Agenda item number, let's see, 12. Let's see, are we going to discuss the marketing thing or make a quick comment?
I didn't say you did, but I did.
I'm sorry, on the marketing budget?
Jason Stanek, Director of Marketing and Contractor Services. Was that on? Sorry, Mark. Jason Stanek, Director of Marketing and Contractor Services. Yeah, I'm not going to be giving a presentation, but I wanted to briefly update the board on the information that was included in the board packet, which the first several pages is a detailed description of each of the 12 different marketing budget program areas that we have. And then the final page is a tabulated listing detailing the budget amount for each of those programs. And just to remind the board, this is it's a jointly funded program with Northern Natural Gas in the district. It's a 65%, 35% split. the 35% that the district contributes is part of the general budget that Mr. Schaffer presented earlier. So I'd be happy to take any questions on any of the information or the slide deck that Mr. Doyle sent out to the board yesterday.
I think there's any questions. We got the information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to add a comment. I appreciate our rebate program, such as for the dryer rebate. I think that is really encouraging for people to continue, if they need to buy a new dryer, to continue to use gas, or if they're kind of contemplating that, to switch over to gas. It's efficient, and it's a good rebate program. It applies to their ongoing bill. And I'd like to see us actually get a little more information on that out to the residential, the actual customer.
Yeah, it's the dryer and range have been a little difficult because we do with COVID. It's kind of clamped down on some of the home show promotions we've done. But I've worked with Stephanie Mueller's group. We've done some bill stuffers and social media events and items
I don't know
like
if this is appropriate, but do you work with like the Furniture Mart or other?
Yes, yeah. Actually,
Good.
in lieu of the home show last year, which was canceled, we were set to do a booth with them promoting this, and once that got canceled, we still did a promotion directly through the Mart where we did. They donated a gas stove, and then we also gave out a $500 rebate towards the purchase of a dryer range. So.
Great, thank
yeah,
you.
we are doing things. It's just slow traction.
Yeah.
I have out of morbid curiosity, does this represent an increase over 2021? The 350 or portion?
No, it's exactly the same. It's been the same for several years now.
All right. I'm a recovering advertising and marketing and PR person, so.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any board members have any comments they'd like to share at this time? I'd like to mention that due to COVID-related precautions, members of the public have access to the meeting via WebEx connection that is set up in a conference room adjacent to the boardroom at the headquarters building here. Are any members of the public there in the conference room who would like to address the board? And if so, please indicate your intentions to the moderator.
No comments, Chairman McGowan.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I don't believe we have a closed session need for that. Mark, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I'd just like to take a second and just thank my fellow board members. This is my last meeting as chairman this year. The year has gone by so fast, I can't believe it. It's December already, and I've gone through my January through December as chair, and I appreciate all the support and help from all of you. So thank you very, very much.
Job well done, Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
Job well done this year. Thank you.
It's a challenging year. Thank you. I've yet to see one that isn't.
Pardon?
It was a challenging year, but I've yet to see one that isn't. So,
Yeah.
but good job.
Every year is challenging, right? So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Discussion?
Very good.
Roll call.
Howard. Howard.
Quit.
Do we need to close the public session too?
Howard. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bigley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes. Mark, do we have to close the public?
The adjournment of the meeting closed.
Okay. Okay. So we're good. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.